What happens when a forbidden Omega, born powerless and unloved, is claimed by the ruthless Lycan King who swore never to love again? When his darkness meets her innocence, can either survive the bond that burns between them, or will their fates destroy both the kingdom and their hearts? This is not just a love story. It's a war between dominance, destiny, and desire. The rain came first, soft, cold, and merciless. It fell on her trembling shoulders as she knelt in the mud, surrounded by the sneers of wolves in human form. Lyra's torn dress clung to her skin, blood mixing with rainwater, her silver eyes wide with shame. Above her, the moon burned bright, a witness to her humiliation. The Alpha had declared her guilty of defying the royal command, and now the Lycan King himself stood before her. His voice was deep, haunting, and smooth as a blade. "So this is the Omega who thought she could run from my claim?" he asked, stepping closer. Every word dripped with restrained fury. Lyra dared to look up at him, those golden eyes, that cruel smirk, and whispered, "I never wanted to be claimed." The crowd gasped. The king's jaw flexed. He crouched low, his breath warm against her ear, and murmured words that made every soul freeze. "I will fit my every inch into your innocent body," he said quietly, not as a threat, but as a promise. Lightning split the sky. The world around them trembled. The wolves fell to their knees, heads bowed. The Lycan King's power pulsed through the air, invisible but undeniable. His name was Kael, ruler of the Bloodfang dynasty, a beast born from moonlight and rage. No one dared challenge his authority. Yet here stood a fragile Omega girl who met his eyes without flinching. The audacity of her silence made his heart stir in ways he despised. Lyra, drenched and broken, didn't cry. Instead, she whispered, "Do what you must, Your Majesty, but know this, I will never be yours willingly." Her words cracked the night like thunder. Even Kael blinked, uncertain whether to punish her defiance or admire it. He reached out, gripping her chin roughly, forcing her to meet his gaze. His thumb brushed the dirt on her lips. "You speak with fire for one born without a spark," he murmured, his tone half curiosity, half warning. Around them, the pack murmured, afraid to breathe too loud. Kael's aura shifted, darker, heavier, his wolf clawing for dominance beneath his skin. "You think you can resist a king?" Lyra's heartbeat echoed in her chest like drums in a silent forest. "I don't need to resist. I just need to survive you." That sentence hit Kael harder than any sword ever could. The air thickened, the scent of fear, rain, and something dangerously close to longing lingered between them. Kael stood, his shadow stretching across her small form. The moonlight traced the sharp lines of his jaw, the black leather that hugged his body, the silver insignia of his crown tattoo, a mark that shimmered when his temper flared. "Take her to the palace," he commanded. His beta hesitated. "My king, she's—" "Now!" Kael roared, voice breaking the night into shards of silence. Two guards grabbed Lyra's arms. She didn't fight. Her eyes full of quiet fire locked on Kael's. In that fleeting moment, he saw something he hadn't seen in years: fearless innocence. It disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. As they dragged her away, the king turned his face toward the storm and whispered to himself, "Why do I feel her?" The rain stopped. The crowd scattered. The moon hid behind clouds, ashamed of what it had seen. But in the quiet aftermath, a prophecy stirred, a whisper carried on the wind through the pines. When the beast falls for the broken, The kingdom shall bleed before it heals. Kael didn't hear it. Lyra didn't know it. But their fates had already been bound. Somewhere deep within the castle walls, the spirits of old Lycans awakened, sensing what was coming. A love so forbidden, it could either save or destroy them all. And as lightning rolled one last time across the horizon, the Lycan King's words echoed in her mind, not as cruelty, but as destiny. The palace smelled of stone, iron, and secrets. Lyra's bare feet echoed on the marble floor as she was dragged through endless halls lit by torches that flickered like trembling hearts. Every shadow seemed alive. Wolves bowed as the Lycan King passed, but their eyes followed Lyra instead. Curious, hungry, judgmental. The guards threw her into a chamber colder than the rain outside. The doors slammed shut, locking her inside. She sat up slowly, breathing through the ache in her ribs. Everything hurt. But more than pain, there was fury. Why me, she thought. Omegas like her were invisible, meant to serve, not to be seen, especially not by royalty. Yet the king's eyes had found her in the chaos of the hunt, and now she was trapped inside the beast's den. She looked up at the moonlight spilling through the iron window and whispered, "You should have left me in the dirt." Kael watched her through a slit in the door, unseen. Something about the girl unsettled him. She should have been broken, begging for mercy, trembling beneath his authority. Instead, she sat there in silence, back straight, defiant even in chains. His wolf stirred uneasily within him, its voice deep and restless. "She's not ordinary." Kael clenched his jaw. "She's an Omega," he muttered to himself. "She's nothing." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He had seen her eyes. They carried something ancient, something unyielding. His beta, Ronan, approached quietly. "You brought a cursed one into your home, my king," Ronan warned. "The elders will talk." Kael turned, his voice like thunder. "Let them talk. The last man who questioned me no longer has a tongue." But his eyes, those golden eyes, betrayed doubt for the first time in years. Morning came draped in mist. Lyra awoke to the sound of distant bells and the scent of roasted meat. A maid entered, trembling, carrying clean clothes in a bowl of water. "The king demands your presence," she whispered. Lyra stood, ignoring the bruises, her dignity intact. The gown she was given was silver, thin, and far too fine for someone like her. As she slipped into it, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Mud fading, eyes still sharp. "He wants me to look like one of them," she thought bitterly. The guards arrived, leading her through towering doors to the throne room. Every step felt heavier. The room was vast, with the ceiling painted in moon phases. Kael sat on his throne of obsidian stone, silent as death. When Lyra entered, he spoke without looking at her. "Kneel." She didn't move. Gasps rippled through the court. "I said kneel," he repeated, his voice low, dangerous. Lyra lifted her chin. "You can force my body to kneel, but you'll never make my spirit bow." For a heartbeat, time stopped. Then Kael rose from his throne, his boots clicking against the marble, each step echoing like a countdown. He stopped just inches from her. His scent, pine, smoke, power, surrounded her. "You think defiance makes you strong?" "No," she whispered. "It makes me human." Something flickered in Kael's gaze, a shadow of pain, quickly masked by rage. He reached out, gripping her wrist. "You forget who I am." "No," she said, staring into his eyes. "You forget what you've become." The room fell utterly silent. Even the flames and the torches seemed to hold their breath. Kael's chest rose and fell, his wolf fighting to break free, but he released her instead. "Take her back to the cell," he ordered, voice trembling with something he couldn't name. That night, Kael couldn't sleep. Her words haunted him, replaying like whispers in the dark. "You forget what you've become." He paced his chambers, staring out at the moonlit forest where his ancestors lay buried. Long ago, he had loved once and lost everything.
Since then, he had sworn that no heart, no woman would ever reach him again. Yet one fragile Omega had cracked the walls he'd built with blood and fury. Across the castle, Lyra lay awake on the cold floor, whispering to herself, "You can cage me, King, but you'll never own me." And somewhere deep inside Kael's chest, the beast growled. Not in anger this time, but in recognition. Something had begun that neither could stop. Something dangerous, divine, and inevitable.
The castle never slept. Its corridors whispered with ghosts of kings long gone, and Lyra could feel their eyes watching as she wandered her cell like a caged animal. 2 nights had passed since the throne room. Her wrists still ached where Kael had grabbed her, but her pride remained unbroken. Outside her window, the forest stretched endlessly, the moonlight turning the trees into silver blades. Somewhere out there, wolves howled, a sound that felt both familiar and foreign. She closed her eyes and whispered to the wind. "You hear me, don't you? You know I don't belong here." But something did answer, faintly. A low growl, soft, almost comforting. It wasn't in her head. It was inside her chest. She gasped, clutching at her heart. The growl pulsed again. Her body shivered. She didn't understand it, but deep down, her instincts screamed, "Something inside you is waking up." Across the castle, Kael stood in the war chamber, his generals arguing over border raids and rogue pacts. But his attention drifted. He couldn't focus. His wolf was restless, prowling beneath his skin. "You're distracted," Ronan said quietly. Kael didn't deny it. "She's not ordinary," he muttered. "Her scent changes when she's afraid, like Moonfire." Ronan frowned. "Moonfire doesn't exist, my king. It's an old myth." Kael looked up sharply. "So was I, until I tore through 50 soldiers at once." The room fell silent. His wolf snarled in his mind, urging him to return to the Omega, to see her, to understand her. Kael slammed his fist on the table. Enough. But even as he said it, he found himself walking toward the dungeon, guided by something primal, something he no longer controlled. When Kael reached her cell, Lyra was awake, sitting in the corner, pale light painting her face. Her eyes flashed faintly, not silver anymore, but a strange glowing blue. "What are you?" Kael whispered, more to himself than to her. Lyra looked up, startled by the sound of his voice. "I could ask you the same, my king." He stepped closer. The air thickened. "Your scent," he muttered. "It's changing." Lyra shook her head. "I don't understand any of this." He crouched in front of her, studying her face with the intensity of a predator. "You should be trembling right now," he said. "But you're not." Her lips trembled, but not from fear. "Maybe I've run out of tears," she whispered. And then, before she could stop herself, she added, "Or maybe you don't scare me anymore." Something broke inside him. He didn't roar, didn't strike. Instead, Kael reached out and placed his palm against the cold iron bars between them. His hand was shaking. "You should be careful, Omega," he said, his tone low and raw. "When I stop frightening you, that's when you're in the most danger." For a moment, their eyes locked, his golden and burning, hers glowing faintly like twin moons. Then, without a word, he turned and left, his steps echoing down a hall. Lyra pressed her hand to where his had been, her heart pounding with something she refused to name. Outside, thunder rolled again. The world was shifting, bending towards something unstoppable. Later that night, the whispers began. The maid spoke of strange lights near the dungeon. The elders murmured of prophecies long forgotten. And in the great library, a single scroll burned to ash on its own, its last words glowing before vanishing completely. "The Moonfire Omega shall awaken when touched by the beast who kills for love."
Neither Lyra nor Kael knew those words yet, but fate had already sealed its pages. As dawn crept across the horizon, Lyra awoke to the sound of chains falling from her wrists. Not by magic, but by will. She stood, heart racing, eyes glowing brighter now. Somewhere deep in the castle, Kael froze mid-step, his wolf growling one word that sent a chill through his spine. Mate.
The morning sun broke over the blood-fanged castle like a blade through mist. Kael stood on the balcony, eyes fixed on the forest below. His wolf was casing beneath his skin, restless, agitated, growling her name with every heartbeat. Lyra, Lyra, Lyra. He gripped the railing until the stone cracked under his hands. He hadn't lost control like this in years. Ever since the war that made him king, Kael had kept his emotions buried beneath discipline and wrath. But now, every rule, every oath he'd made to himself was unraveling. "She's my curse," he muttered. His reflection in the glass shifted, golden eyes replaced by a wolf's glare. "Or my end." Behind him, Ronan entered quietly. "You called for me, my king?" Kael didn't turn. "Tell me what the archives say about Moonfire Omegas." Ronan hesitated. "Those stories are forbidden." Kael's voice hardened. "Then unforbid them." Meanwhile, in the lower wing of the castle, Lyra wandered her quarters, no longer a cell, but still a prison. The chains had fallen, but guards still lingered outside her door. She could feel their fear whenever she passed too close. The air itself felt heavier now, charged with something she couldn't control. Her skin tingled under sunlight. When she touched metal, sparks hissed faintly. "What's happening to me?" she whispered. The maid attending her crossed herself. "They say you carry the Moonfire," she murmured. "That's why the king keeps you alive." Lyra froze. "Moonfire?" The maid nodded quickly. "It's said to awaken only in those the gods choose to destroy or to save kings." The words struck deep. Destroy or save. Lyra didn't want either. All she wanted was freedom. But in her chest, the strange warmth pulsed again, and this time it whispered back, "You were never meant to be free." Kael entered the war library hours later, a place lit only by blue flame and filled with scrolls older than the kingdom itself. Ronan handed him a torn parchment marked with the crest of ancient seers. "Read it," Kael ordered. Ronan hesitated. "It says, 'When the Moonfire rises, the beasts will bow, and the kingdom will burn.'" The silence that followed felt endless. Kael's eyes narrowed. "Bow? I don't bow." His wolf laughed in his mind, deep and cruel. "You already have." He slammed the parchment onto the table, its edges curling under the heat of his fury. "She's dangerous," Ronan said carefully. "If the prophecy is true, the Omega could destroy everything you built." Kael turned sharply. "Then I'll destroy her first." But even as he said it, the words tasted wrong, like betrayal, like fear. That night, the castle grew quiet, but Kael's mind raged louder than the wind. He couldn't stop seeing her eyes, how they glowed in the dark, how her voice trembled but never broke. Every instinct told him to end her life before destiny could take shape. Yet something inside him fought back. "She's mine." The wolf's claim burned through his blood. He stumbled into the training yard, striking the air, claws slicing through shadows. But no battle quieted his chaos. Finally, he collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, whispering to the moon, "If this is a curse, let it end with me." A cold breeze swept through the courtyard, and the torches dimmed. In that silence, the ancient spirit seemed to answer. Curses don't end, Kael. They awaken. Far above him, Lyra stood at her window, watching lightning snake through the clouds. The sky felt alive, restless, as if reacting to something she couldn't see. Her pulse quickened. A voice, soft, unfamiliar, spoke inside her mind. "He feels you." She gasped, stepping back.
"Who's there?" The voice didn't answer, but her chest burned hotter, her veins shimmering faintly beneath her skin. In that instant, somewhere across the castle, Kael's breath caught. His body reacted, eyes glowing gold. The invisible bond between them had snapped awake. Neither could escape it now. Lyra pressed her palm to her heart, trembling, as the final whisper echoed in her mind. "You were his curse and his cure."
The storm had passed, but the castle felt more restless than before. Servants whispered that the king hadn't left his chambers all night, and strange tremors rippled through the walls as if the very stones were alive. Lyra felt it too, an invisible tug in her chest, a heartbeat that wasn't hers pulsing in sync with her own. She tried to ignore it, but every time she inhaled, she could feel him. Kael. His anger, his breath, his presence, like a shadow inside her soul. "Get out of my head," she muttered, pressing her palms to her temples. But the more she resisted, the stronger the pull became. Images flashed behind her eyes, his face, his pain, a glimpse of him kneeling alone in the courtyard, bathed in moonlight. Her body trembled. She wasn't supposed to see him, yet somehow their bond broke through walls and blood. "No," she whispered, "this isn't real." But deep inside, a voice she couldn't silence said, "It is fate." Kael sat in his dark chamber, shirtless, sweat glistening across his scarred chest. He'd fought himself for hours, trying to cage the beast clawing inside him. His wolf demanded one thing, to claim her. "You will not control me," he growled, slamming his fist against the wall. But even that pain wasn't enough. He could still feel her fear, her defiance, the rapid rhythm of her heart. The bond had formed. "Impossible," he hissed. "Lycans could only bond through a sacred ritual or by fate's cruel hand. And fate, it seemed, had chosen the one creature he could never have." "She's an Omega," he said aloud, trying to reason with himself. "A fragile servant, not my equal." Yet his wolf's voice echoed back. "Then why does your heart race when she breathes?" Kael froze. The truth was already devouring him from within. That evening, Kael summoned her. The guards escorted Lyra into the throne room again, though this time the air was different. There was no court, no audience, only him. The torches burned blue instead of gold. She stood before him, chin high, despite her trembling. "Why am I here?" His voice came low, rough like gravel. "Tell me, Omega, do you feel it too?" She frowned. "Feel what?" He stepped closer, his gaze locking on hers. "The bond." Her lips parted. "That's not possible." "Say it. Say you don't feel me inside your head." She hesitated, unable to lie. Kael's eyes darkened with fury and disbelief. "Then it's true," he muttered, pacing. "The Moonfire curse." He looked up suddenly. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I didn't ask for this," she shot back. "Neither did I," he roared, the sound shaking the room. Silence followed. Heavy, electric, dangerous. Lyra took a cautious step forward. "Then break it," she said softly. "End it." Kael stared at her, almost laughing. "If I could, I would have torn it apart already." His hands trembled at his sides. "This bond, this curse, ties my strength to you. If you die, I die. If you suffer, I feel it. You have made me weaker." "Then let me go," she pleaded.
Send me far away." Kael's voice dropped to a whisper. "You think distance can break fate?" He turned, running a hand through his hair, his body tense with restrained rage. "You've doomed us both, Omega." Lyra swallowed hard. "Maybe fate didn't choose wrong," she said quietly. "Maybe it's giving you a chance to remember you're still human." Kael froze. The truth hit something deep inside him, a truth he'd buried long ago. For the first time, he didn't know whether to hate her or thank her. That night, neither slept. Lyra sat by her window staring at the stars, while Kael stood at his balcony watching the same sky from miles away, but feeling as if they shared one breath. The wind carried the same scent between them, wildflowers and smoke. Their hearts thudded in rhythm, echoing through the bonds like twin drums of fate. Somewhere in the depths of the castle, the seers stirred from their long silence. One whispered, "The bond is born." Another answered, "Then blood will follow." As the moon reached its peak, Kael closed his eyes, whispering her name, while Lyra, miles apart, whispered his at the same time. And though they didn't know it yet, the first thread of love had just been tied, not by choice, but by destiny's cruel, beautiful hand.
The kingdom buzzed with uneasy silence. Every creature, wolf, lichen, and human alike, could feel it in the air. The blood moon was coming. Once every 100 years, it rose red as flame, igniting every hidden truth and secret bond. Kael stood in the war tower, staring at its slow ascent through the horizon. His heart was pounding, his blood hot with instinct. "It's starting," Ronan said behind him. Kael didn't reply. His eyes burned gold as his wolf stirred restlessly. The blood moon magnified every power, every desire, and every bond. If his connection to Lyra was real, tonight would reveal it for all to see. Kael clenched his jaw. "Double the guards," he ordered. "If anyone sees her, there'll be panic." But even as he spoke, his wolf whispered something that made him falter. "You can't hide what's written in blood." Lyra felt it too. The pull, the heat, the storm beneath her skin. Her veins glowed faintly under the moonlight, her reflection shimmering in the mirror as if she were turning into light itself. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, clutching her chest. The maid who attended her trembled, too afraid to answer. The castle lights flickered as the moon's glow turned crimson. Somewhere deep inside Lyra's heart, she felt Kael, his rage, his fear, his resistance. "Stop fighting it," she whispered, though she didn't know why. Her voice seemed to travel through the walls, through the air itself. Kael froze in the tower, hearing her whisper in his mind, "Stop fighting it." The connection tightened, pulling them together like magnets. His control snapped. Without thinking, he shifted, his body morphing into his lichen form. Taller, darker, more powerful than anything that had walked the earth since the ancients. Down in her chamber, Lyra's body reacted in sync. Her skin glowed brighter, her breath sharp and quick. Her heart thudded against her ribs as the walls around her cracked from unseen power. The guards outside her door shouted, backing away. Blue fire burst from her fingertips, spreading across the floor like liquid moonlight. The maid screamed and fled. But Lyra stood still, eyes wide with wonder and terror. She could feel Kael moving toward her, could sense every step of his monstrous stride. When the door shattered open, the Lycan King filled the doorway, his beastly form illuminated by red light. His growl shook the room. But when his eyes met hers, his gold against her glowing blue, the world fell silent. The moon, the wind, the fire, all paused to witness what fate had forged.
Kael's claws dug into the stone floor. "What are you?" he growled, voice half human, half beast. Lyra's tears glimmered as she whispered, "I don't know." The magic between them surged, a current of raw energy that cracked the ceiling and sent wind spiraling through the halls. Kael staggered back, his wolf howling within. "You're burning me alive." "Then let go," she cried, her voice breaking. But neither could. The bond had awakened fully now, no longer invisible, but a living force that pulsed between them, glowing like molten silver. Kael's beast lunged forward, but instead of attacking, he fell to his knees before her, roaring in agony. Lyra dropped beside him, her small hands cupping his face. "You're hurting." "Because of you," he rasped. "Because of us," she corrected. And in that single heartbeat, the moon turned blood red. The explosion that followed shook the entire kingdom. Magic rippled through the sky, visible even miles away. Every wolf in the realm howled in unison, their eyes glowing in answer to their king's pain. The castle's walls split, yet somehow Lyra and Kael remained at the center, untouched, bound by light and flame. When it was over, they lay side by side, breathing heavily, the red glow fading to silver. Kael turned to her, his voice hoarse but gentle. "If this is fate, then may the gods forgive us both," he whispered. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering back. "Fate doesn't forgive, Kael. It tests." The moon dimmed behind clouds, and for the first time in centuries, the Lycan King's tears fell. Warm, silent, and real.
The morning after the blood moon was not quiet. It was terrified. The castle's grand hall smelled of smoke and iron. Walls had cracked, towers had fallen, and soldiers whispered that the king's roar had summoned storms from the heavens. But what truly terrified them wasn't the destruction. It was the girl, the Omega who had survived the wrath of the Lycan King and walked away glowing like the dawn. Lyra stood on the balcony of her new quarters, wrapped in a dark cloak, staring down at the shattered courtyard. Her powers still hummed faintly beneath her skin, unpredictable and alive. She didn't know what she had become, only that she was no longer powerless. The wind carried murmurs from below. "The cursed girl, the false queen." She ignored them, whispering to herself, "Let them talk. They already buried me once." Kael had spent the entire night fighting his own reflection. The beast inside him had nearly destroyed everything, yet it hadn't killed her. That thought haunted him most. No one had ever survived his full transformation, let alone calmed it. And when she touched him, when her light met his shadow, he'd felt something terrifyingly human. Peace. He slammed his fist into the stone wall. "This is weakness," he growled. "She's making me weak." Ronan entered cautiously, bowing low. "The council demands answers, my king. They saw the magic." Kael turned, golden eyes burning. "They'll have none." "They say she's cursed." "They said the same about me," Kael shot back. "And yet I sit on this throne." His voice softened unexpectedly. "Keep her guarded. If the council touches her, they touch death." But his wolf's voice whispered a truth he couldn't silence. "You're not protecting her, Kael. You're protecting yourself from losing her." Lyra wasn't allowed to leave her chambers, but the castle walls couldn't silence whispers. Servants avoided her, crossing themselves when she passed. Only one dared to bring her food, a girl named Mira, young and gentle. "They fear you," Mira said quietly one morning. "But some of us, we saw the light. You saved him, didn't you?" Lyra hesitated, unsure how to answer. "He would have died," she said finally. "I only did what I had to." Mira smiled faintly. "Then maybe the gods didn't curse you.
Maybe they crowned you." Lyra laughed bitterly. "A queen in chains." Mira's smile faded. Not for long. The words echoed in Lyra's chest. That night, as she stared at the moon's fading glow, she made a silent vow. If fate had bound her to the beast, she would not remain his prisoner. She would find her power and use it to reclaim her life. In the council chamber below, chaos brewed. The elders of the Bloodfang dynasty demanded blood. "The Omega carries ancient power," one hissed. "She is not of this world." Another slammed his fist on the table. "The king has lost control. The curse spreads." Kael entered mid-argument, his presence silencing the room. "Speak carefully," he warned. "The next man who calls her a curse will learn what real curses feel like." The eldest counselor glared at him. "She is changing you, my king." "Maybe I need to change," Kael said quietly. The room froze. For the first time, his defiance wasn't out of anger. It was out of conviction. He turned to leave, his cloak sweeping across the floor. "Keep your eyes off her. She belongs to no one's judgment but mine." Outside the chamber, his hands trembled. "Why do I keep defending her?" he thought. But deep down, he already knew. As night fell again, Lyra stood before her mirror, whispering to the reflection that no longer looked entirely human. Her eyes glowed faintly, her aura soft but fierce. She said, "They want to bury me, but they forget things buried by kings can still rise as queens." Far away, Kael stood in the courtyard beneath the same moon, his heart echoing her words through the bond neither of them could break. The wind howled like prophecy, carrying one truth through the castle walls. Love was coming, and it would not be gentle. Days turned into restless nights, and the once feared Lycan King was no longer the same. Kael, who once ruled through fear and precision, now found himself distracted, haunted by silver eyes that refused to leave his thoughts. The throne room, once alive with war strategies and command, now felt hollow. His generals whispered that their king had lost focus, that an Omega had stolen his strength. He heard them. He ignored them. But when he stared at his reflection, at the tired eyes and clenched jaw, he saw the truth. He was changing. "I've forgotten what it means to rule," he muttered to himself. Ronan, ever loyal, approached with careful steps. "No, my king, you've remembered what it means to feel." Kael's glare silenced him, but Ronan's words stayed. That night, Kael stood by the balcony, the wind cold against his face, wondering if he'd already lost his crown to the one woman he was meant to destroy. Lyra's world had shifted too. Her power was no longer a mystery, but a burden she couldn't control. Every emotion sparked light or flame. When she dreamt, she saw through Kael's eyes, his loneliness, his nightmares, his scars. She hated that she understood him. "He's the monster who took everything from me," she whispered into the dark. Yet the bond whispered back, "Monsters can bleed too." Mira, her only friend, noticed her silence. "You care for him," Mira said softly. Lyra looked away. "I hate him." "Then why does your heart race when he's near?" Lyra didn't answer. She didn't have to. The truth was already visible in her trembling hands. That night, when the bond flared again, soft, aching, Lyra pressed her hand against her heart and whispered, "If I'm his weakness, then I'll make it his undoing." At dawn, Kael sat in council once more, but the air was thick with tension. Reports of rebellion spread, rogue packs rising beyond the eastern borders. "They claim the king has gone soft," a general said coldly. "They say your loyalty to the cursed girl weakens the throne." Kael's gaze sharpened like a blade. "Let them come test my weakness then." His tone was calm, but inside he felt the pull again. Lyra's fear. She was in danger, But that warning he stood, ignoring the council's shouts, and stormed from the hall. His instincts led him through twisting corridors to her chamber. The door was broken. Guards were dead. Lyra was gone. His wolf howled through him, ripping out of his control. The entire castle shook under his roar. "Find her!" he commanded, but his voice was more beast than man. Lyra woke in darkness, bound and gagged inside a carriage speeding through the forest. The scent told her who took her. Wolves, but not Kael's. The rogues. The king's witch. Let's see if the great Kael will trade his crown for you. Panic gripped her chest, but the bond flickered faintly. "Kael," she whispered in her mind. For a moment, there was silence. Then, his voice, distant but sharp as thunder. "Hold on." The sound of it filled her with strength. She closed her eyes, summoning the light inside her. It burned through her ropes, blinding her captors. The carriage veered off the road, crashing into the trees. When the smoke cleared, the rogues found not a frightened Omega, but a woman standing amid silver fire, her eyes glowing like the moon itself. "Tell your king," she said, her voice trembling with power. "Her curse no longer needs saving." Far away, Kael felt it, the surge of her magic, wild and untamed. His wolf quieted, almost in awe. "She's learning," he whispered. For the first time in years, a smile tugged at his lips, faint but real. Yet that peace lasted only a heartbeat before Ronan burst into the tower. "The council is moving against you," he warned. "They've seen what she can do. They're calling it treason." Kael turned, his gold eyes dark with fury. Then they've forgotten who their king is. He drew his sword, moonlight gleaming off the blade. "If they want war, I'll give them one." As thunder rolled in the distance, Kael's heart whispered what his pride never would. Not for power. Not for the throne. For her.
The full moon rose red that night, bleeding across the sky like a warning. The Lycan kingdom trembled under the weight of what was coming. Kael stood at the balcony of his war chamber, the wind tangling his dark hair, the silver crown heavy on his head. The council hall behind him burned with voices, accusations, fear, betrayal. "The Omega has bewitched him," one snarled. "He no longer fights for his people." Kael's eyes glowed like molten gold as he turned. "You think I fight for you?" His voice silenced the room. "I fight because I built this kingdom with blood, and I will burn it before I let traitors tear it apart." He unsheathed his sword and drove it into the stone floor, the crack echoing like thunder. "Prepare the armies. We march before dawn." But as his generals scrambled away, Kael's chest tightened. He could still feel Lyra's bond flicker weakly, somewhere beyond the woods. The war outside was rising, but the one inside him had already begun. Lyra stumbled through the fog-drenched forest, her body aching from the crash. The silver flames she'd unleashed had saved her life, but they drained her to the edge of collapse. Every breath came with pain, every step through the mud heavier than the last. She could still hear the rogues' voices in her head, the promise that Kael's army was turning against him. She didn't know if it was true. She only knew she had to find him. "You said you'd protect me," she whispered into the cold, "but now it's my turn." She pressed her palm to the earth, trying to sense him through the bond. But instead of Kael's warmth, she felt something colder. Distant wolves moving fast, armed, hunting her. Her pulse raced. She ducked behind a fallen tree just as one of the rogue's arrows whistled past her face. For a heartbeat, her fear almost swallowed her. Then she remembered Mira's voice. "Don't hide what you are." The ground around her shimmered faintly, and the wolves began to hesitate. At the castle gates, Kael's army assembled like a storm given form. Thousands of Lycans stood in silence, waiting for their king. He walked through their ranks without armor, only a black cloak that whipped behind him like smoke. His wolf, restless beneath his skin, clawed to be free. "My king," Ronan said, falling into step beside him. "If you go into this war for her, you risk everything." Kael didn't stop walking. Then everything was never mine to begin with. The gates groaned open, and the howls of 1,000 wolves filled the night. Kael shifted mid-stride,
his massive black wolf form shaking the ground, his eyes burning gold. With one deafening roar, he led his army into the forest. Lightning struck the mountains as if the world itself knew two powers were about to collide. And somewhere in that forest, Lyra felt it too. The rhythm of war, of destiny, drawing her to him. The battle broke before sunrise. The forest floor erupted in chaos. Snarls, blades, and blood. Kael's warriors clashed with the rogue packs who had sworn allegiance to no throne. The air was thick with silver mist and fury. Kael fought like a storm, every movement precise, every strike fueled by something far deeper than rage. But even in the chaos, he could feel her fear, her defiance. When a rogue lunged at him, Kael ripped him apart with one brutal motion, his voice echoing through the trees. "Where is she?" No one answered, only more attacks. Until through the haze, he saw her, barefoot, bloodied, her hands glowing with white fire. She turned toward him, eyes wide not with fear, but recognition. Kael. His name left her lips like a prayer and a curse, and at that moment, the entire battlefield seemed to still. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The moonlight hit them both, Wolf and Omega, king and outcast, two broken halves of the same fate. Kael shifted back to human form, his breath ragged, his chest heaving. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice trembling with relief and fear. "Neither should you," she answered, her voice shaking but steady. "This isn't your war anymore." She raised her hand, power swirling like wind and flame. Kael stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Then whose is it?" The light pulsed between them, brighter, fiercer, alive. "Ours," she said, and unleashed her power. The explosion of light tore through the battlefield, scattering wolves, shattering trees, silencing everything. When the dust settled, the only thing that remained was the faint glow between their joined hands. Kael looked at her, voice breaking. "You destroyed the world for me?" She smiled weakly. "No, Kael, I'd destroy it with you." The forest still smoked from the explosion. Trees lay split and burning, the air thick with the scent of blood and ash. The war had stopped, but at a terrible cost. Wolves on both sides were wounded or dead, and the red moon was fading into dawn. Kael stood in the center of the devastation, his black cloak torn, his body trembling with exhaustion. Lyra lay a few feet away, motionless. Her hair, once golden, was streaked with silver light that refused to fade. Kael dropped to his knees beside her, pressing his hand to her cheek. She was warm, but barely breathing. "No," he whispered, voice cracking, "don't you dare." He shook her gently, then harder. "Lyra." The name came out as a roar that echoed through the valley. The bond between them pulsed faintly, a thread of life, but weaker than before. Ronan appeared behind him, his armor dented and blood-stained. "She's alive," he said quietly, "but that kind of power takes a price." Kael's head lowered. "Then let it take mine." When Lyra opened her eyes, the world was silent. She lay on a cold bed of stone in the ruins of what used to be a temple. The sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, painting golden stripes across her skin. Her body ached as if burned from within. Then she saw him, Kael, sitting nearby, his arm bandaged, his gaze distant. "You're awake," he said softly, not looking at her. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her chest. "What happened?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "You saved them. You almost killed yourself doing it." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "How many?" Kael turned to face her finally, his expression unreadable. "Too many." Silence hung heavy between them, thicker than the smoke outside. "You shouldn't have done that," he murmured. "You don't get to tell me what I should do," she whispered. "Not anymore." Outside, the remaining Lycans gathered in uneasy silence. The battle was over, but their loyalty was fractured. Whispers spread. Some called Lyra a savior, others a curse. Kael's council, reduced but still alive, demanded an audience. Ronan entered the temple quietly. They want answers, he said. They fear her power. Kael's eyes flicked toward the sleeping Lyra. So they'll get answers from me. He rose, towering, regal even in ruin. When he stepped out into the courtyard, every wolf bowed, but the air was tense. Our king bleeds for an Omega, one elder said bitterly. He forgets who we are. Kael's voice boomed like thunder. No, I remember exactly who we are. We are wolves who've lost too much to pride. His gaze swept over them. She saved this kingdom when none of you could. From this day, you'll honor her, or you'll face me. The elder snarled but lowered his head. For the first time in centuries, fear and respect mingled in equal measure before the throne. That night, Kael stood alone under the moonlight again, his thoughts heavy. The forest below was quiet, but peace felt distant. He touched the bond between him and Lyra. It flickered faintly, weak but alive. You weren't meant for this, he said softly to the wind. You were meant for light, not blood. He thought of his past, of every choice that led him to this moment. His father's crown, his mother's death, the years he'd buried his heart to protect his people. Now, one girl's fire had undone him. He could no longer be the king who ruled by fear. But he didn't know who he was without it. Behind him, Lyra's soft voice broke the silence. Then stop trying to be who they want. He turned sharply. She stood in the doorway, pale but fierce. Be who you want. For a moment, the world stilled. Kael took one slow step toward her. And who is that? He asked. She met his gaze unflinching. The king who remembers how to love. Kael's hand reached for hers, but before their fingers met, a low growl echoed through the ruins. Ronan burst through the archway, eyes wide. Kael, we have a problem. The tension shattered. What now? Kael demanded. It's the rogues. They're retreating, but not alone. Ronan's voice dropped. They've taken Mira. Lyra's heart stopped. What? Ronan nodded grimly. They left the message. If the king wants peace, he'll trade the witch. Lyra's eyes filled with tears and her hands trembling. They'll kill her, Kael. He stepped forward, his expression darkening. No, they'll try. His voice was low, dangerous. And they'll learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. As he strolled from the ruins, his power crackled through the air. The bond flared alive again. And Lyra finally understood. The price of her fire wasn't just pain. It was everything. The night was silent. But the silence was wrong. Too heavy, too still. Kael's army moved through the forest like shadows, the scent of blood still lingering from the battle before. The rogues had fled east, into the mountains, carrying with them Mira, the one person Lyra still trusted. Kael led the charge himself, his golden eyes glowing in the dark. They think I'll bargain, he said quietly to Ronan. They think I'll trade her. His voice hardened. But I don't trade what's mine. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, the hunger for vengeance clawing its way to the surface. Ronan hesitated. If you go too far, Kael, she'll see what you really are. Kael's jaw flexed. Then she'll finally know the truth. He didn't look back, didn't slow down. Somewhere deep inside he knew. Every step forward meant walking further into the darkness he tried to escape. Lyra rode behind them, her cloak fluttering like torn wings. She had begged Kael to let her come, but now the weight of the decision crushed her. The bond between her and Mira had always been like that of sisters, stronger than blood. And now Mira's scent, faint and desperate, called to her from somewhere ahead. We're close, Lyra said quietly, gripping the saddle. Kael turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. You can feel her? She nodded. like I felt you." His eyes softened for the briefest moment before turning forward again. "Then when I say run, you run. No heroics." Lyra's heart clenched. "You forget who I am, Kael. I'm the one who burned a forest to save you." He gave a sharp breath, half a laugh, half despair. "And I'm the fool who can't decide if I should thank you or fear you." The rogues' camp appeared by moonlight, nestled between cliffs, fires burning low, guards circling the perimeter. Kael's men spread out, silent and deadly. "We take them quietly," Ronan whispered. But Kael's instinct screamed otherwise. Something was wrong. The smell of ash and silver was too strong, too deliberate. A trap. "Fall back," he hissed, but too late. Arrows whistled through the air, silver-tipped, striking the ground like lightning. Wolves howled in agony. Kael lunged forward, shifting mid-air, his claw slicing through attackers. "Find her!" he roared. The battle erupted in chaos, snarls, screams, and the smell of burning fur. Lyra ran through the madness, calling out, "Mira!" Her voice cracked as she stumbled into a cave lit with torches, and there she was, bound, bleeding, but alive. "Lyra!" Mira gasped. "It's a trap! The explosion cut her off, throwing Lyra backward into darkness. When she woke, everything hurt. The cave ceiling had collapsed, dust choking the air. Mira lay a few feet away, pale and trembling. Lyra crawled toward her, ignoring the pain. "It's okay, I'm here," she whispered. Mira shook her head weakly. "No, they took him." Lyra froze. "Who?" "Kael." The words sank like knives. "They planned it," Mira gasped weakly. "They wanted you to come so they could take him instead." Lyra's heart stopped. Through the bond, she felt only emptiness. The thread that had always tied her to Kael was cold, severed. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, no." She pressed her palm to the ground, trying to summon her power, but nothing came. "They used silver on him," Mira said weakly. "He'll die if you don't." Lyra didn't wait to hear the rest. She stood, trembling, her eyes burning with fury. "Then I'll burn the mountains down to find him." Far away, deep in the caves, Kael hung in silver chains that glowed against his skin. His body was broken, his blood dripping onto the cold stone floor. The rogues circled him like vultures, led by a tall figure cloaked in black. The man's voice was smooth, cold. "The king who bleeds for an Omega. How far you've fallen." Kael lifted his head, eyes half open, still burning faintly gold. "You'll wish you'd killed me before she finds you." The man laughed. "Oh, I'm counting on her finding me. She's the real prize, Kael. You're just bait." He turned away, his voice echoing off the stone. "When she comes, her light will die here, and with it, your reign." Kael closed his eyes, his breath ragged, his heart pounding once more for one reason only. Lyra, don't come. But he knew she would. She always did.
The mountain burned crimson beneath the rising blood moon. Smoke spiraled through the ravines, carrying the scent of iron and betrayal. Lyra climbed through the wreckage of the road camp, her cloak torn, her hands blistered from magic she barely controlled. Every breath she took came with a whisper from the bond, a faint echo of Kael's pain. Chains, silver, darkness. She could feel it, as if his agony were stitched beneath her skin. Mira limped behind her, pale but determined. "You can't fight them all," she said weakly. Lyra's gaze hardened. "I don't need to fight them all. I just need to reach him." The sky thundered in response, red lightning flashing across the peaks. For the first time since the war began, Lyra didn't care if she lived or died. She only cared that the man who had once been her captor,
the man who would become her curse, would not die alone in the dark. Deep inside the mountain, Kael's consciousness flickered like a dying flame. Silver ran through his veins, poisoning his wolf, clouding his vision. He could hear footsteps echoing through the cavern, the voice of the man who'd captured him, smooth and venomous. "You know me, Kael. You just don't remember." Through the haze, Kael lifted his head, struggling to focus. The man stepped into the torchlight, revealing a familiar scar along his jaw. "Riven," Kael rasped. "You were supposed to be dead." The rogue leader smiled. "You made sure of that when you left me to die at the border, but the moon doesn't forget betrayal." He leaned closer, voice dropping. "You stole my crown, brother." The words sliced through Kael like a blade. Memories of fire, of a war long buried, flooded his mind. Riven, the half-blood prince he thought lost forever, was alive. And now, he wanted everything Kael had left. Outside, Lyra and Mira reached the mouth of the cavern. The air was thick with silver smoke, choking and cold. Lyra knelt beside a rune-carved stone, its markings glowing faintly. "They've sealed the entrance with blood magic," Mira whispered. "You'll never get through." But Lyra didn't hear her. She pressed her palm against the rune, feeling it burn beneath her skin. "I can," she said softly, "because it's his blood they used." Her magic sparked, white and wild, threading through the ancient barrier. The stone cracked, light bursting through the seams. Mira stumbled back as the mountain itself seemed to groan. "Lyra, stop. You'll kill yourself." But Lyra's eyes glowed like twin moons. "Then let it kill me, as long as it frees him." The spell shattered, throwing her backward, but the seal broke. The roar that followed shook the earth. Somewhere within the cavern, Kael's eyes snapped open. The bond had flared again, bright, alive, unstoppable. Lyra stumbled inside, half-conscious, her heart beat loud in her ears. The tunnels were lit with torches, the shadows crawling with movement. Rogues turned toward her, but she didn't hesitate. Her magic exploded outward, white fire slicing through the dark. Her steps were unsteady, but her power moved like a storm. She found Kael chained to the wall, silver cutting deep into his wrists, his eyes dim. "Kael," she breathed, falling to her knees. He looked at her as though seeing the sun after endless night. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped. "You knew I would." Her hands shook as she tried to break the chains, but they only burned her. Riven's voice filled the cavern, smooth and venomous. How poetic, the witch who saves her monster. Lyra turned, fury blazing in her eyes. "You call him a monster, but you're the one who feeds on fear." Riven's smile didn't waver. Fear builds empires, love destroys them. The battle that followed was chaos made flesh. Lyra and Riven's powers collided, light and shadow crashing like thunder. The cavern walls cracked, the ground splitting beneath them. Kael tore against his chains until his wrists bled, his eyes burning gold again. "Lyra!" Kael shouted as Riven struck her down with a wave of black fire. She screamed as it hit her chest, her magic faltering. Kael's roar shook the mountain as he broke free, chains snapping, silver melting under his fury. He caught Riven mid-strike, slamming him into the stone wall. "You want the crown?" Kael growled. "Take it from my corpse." Riven's smirk never faded. That was always the plan. He plunged a silver blade into Kael's side. Blood spilled like molten gold. Lyra's scream pierced the air as her magic erupted in one final burst. The cavern exploded in white fire that swallowed them all. And in the chaos, the moon outside turned crimson once more. Silence followed the explosion. The mountain lay in ruin, half its peak torn open, the once dark sky now blazing red from the fire that refused to die. Ash fell like snow, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Somewhere in the wreckage, a single heartbeat struggled to continue. Lyra woke first,
coughing, her lungs burning from smoke. Her body trembled as she pushed aside the rocks pinning her down. The air was thick with the scent of silver and blood. Kael? Her voice broke on the name. She stumbled forward through the haze, calling again. Kael! Her hand brushed against something warm, his arm. When she turned him over, her heart stopped. He lay still, pale, the silver blade still buried in his side. His golden eyes were closed, and for the first time, the bond between them was silent. No, she whispered, shaking her head. No, no, no. She pressed her hands over the wound, her magic flickering like dying light. You promised, she sobbed. You said you'd fight. The faintest breath escaped his lips. I did. His voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough to break her completely. Tears streamed down Lyra's cheeks as she cupped his face. Stay with me, she begged. Kael's hand lifted weakly, fingers brushing hers. You burned the sky for me, little wolf. Now let me rest beneath it. Don't you dare, she cried. You don't get to rest. Not yet. But Kael's eyes fluttered open, gold dooming into amber. You changed me, Lyra. You made me remember what it meant to be human. She shook her head, pressing harder on the wound, her magic growing brighter, desperate. Then remember what it means to live. Her magic poured into him, light spilling into his veins, wrapping his body in warmth. But silver was poison even light couldn't heal. He coughed, blood staining his lips. If I die, he whispered, promise me you'll live. Lyra couldn't breathe. Don't say that. Promise me. His voice cracked, a quiet command from a dying king. She pressed her forehead against his, tears mixing with his blood. I promise, she whispered, though it felt like breaking her own soul. His hand fell away, his body going still. The bond between them pulsed once, bright, then fading into nothing. For a moment, the world stopped. The fire died, the wind fell silent. Even the moon seemed to dim. Lyra screamed, the sound raw and inhuman. Her magic erupted, exploding outward in waves of light and grief. The entire mountain trembled, the flames extinguishing in a single breath. And when it was over, she collapsed beside him, trembling, whispering the only words she had left. Don't leave me in the dark. But he was already gone. Riven staggered from the rubble, bloodied but alive. His smile was gone now, replaced with hollow rage. He's dead, and so are you. He raised his hand, shadows twisting from his palm. But Lyra was no longer the frightened Omega he'd expected. Her grief had become something else, something divine. The air around her shimmered as she rose to her feet, eyes burning white. No, she said softly. You're the one who dies. Her magic shot forward, wrapping around him like chains of light. Riven screamed as the power seared through his body, his form dissolving into ash and smoke. Lyra stood over the ruins, breathless, shaking, her power fading with him. When the last echo of his scream vanished, she fell to her knees again, beside Kael's body. The light within her finally dimmed, leaving only silence and the faint sound of wind whispering through the broken stones. By dawn, the battlefield was quiet. The remaining rogues had fled. The Lycans who survived climbed the mountain and found their king, still and pale, his hand clasped in Lyra's. No one dared to touch her. Ronan knelt beside them, tears burning behind his eyes. He died protecting her, he murmured. Mira, barely standing, shook her head. No, she whispered. He died because of her.
and for her. They watched in silence as the first light of morning broke through the smoke. The sun touched Kael's face, turning his stillness into something almost peaceful. And Lyra, though unconscious, still held his hand, refusing to let go even in dreams. The war was over, but peace had come at a cost the world would never understand. The king of wolves had drawn his last breath, and with it, the fire of the Lycan kingdom faded into mourning. The morning after Kael's death carried a silence too heavy to bear. The mountain was now a graveyard of fire and stone, and the once terrifying Lycan King lay motionless beneath a shroud of white linen. His warriors stood around him, their heads bowed, not one daring to speak. The wind that swept across the battlefield whispered his name as if the forest itself mourned him. Lyra sat beside him still, eyes hollow, her fingers entwined with his cold hand. Her white gown was stained red with his blood, her once bright aura dimmed to a soft flicker. She hadn't moved since dawn. "My queen," Ronan said quietly, kneeling beside her. The title startled her, but she didn't answer. He tried again, his voice shaking. "We need to take him home." Her eyes finally shifted toward the ruined horizon, empty and distant. "Home," she echoed, her voice dry as dust. She looked down at Kael's face, peaceful, strong even in death, and whispered, "He never had one." Then, with trembling fingers, she closed his eyes for the last time. The journey back to the capital took 3 days. Every mile of road was lined with warriors who had once feared Kael, now kneeling in sorrow as his body passed. Word spread like fire. The Lycan King is dead. But it wasn't grief alone that filled the air. It was fear. Without Kael's rule, rival packs stirred in the shadows, and whispers of rebellion rose like smoke. Lyra rode behind the cart that carried him, her wolf senses numb, her magic drained. She hadn't spoken to anyone since leaving the mountain. Ronan rode beside her, his armor cracked, his eyes bloodshot. "He'd want you to lead. He believed in you." Lyra looked up slowly, the wind pulling her hair across her face. "I didn't want to be queen. I just wanted to be seen." Her voice cracked, soft but steady. "But maybe being seen means standing even when it hurts." When they reached the castle, the gates opened in silence. The courtyard was filled with wolves, omegas, and servants, all kneeling as Lyra entered. The air felt different now, heavier. The once golden banners of the Lycan kingdom were torn, blackened from the war. Lyra dismounted and walked toward the throne room, her steps echoing like thunder in the stillness. She didn't sit on Kael's throne. Instead, she stopped at its base and turned to the crowd. He ruled with strength, but he died because he found something stronger, mercy. Her eyes scanned the faces before her. "Kael saw me, an Omega no one believed in. He saw all of you the same way. He died for us, not for power. And if I am to lead, I will do the same." Her words carried through the hall like wind through trees, soft but unstoppable. The wolves lowered their heads, not in fear, but in respect. And for the first time in the kingdom's history, the throne room echoed not with roars, but silence that felt sacred. That night, under the same moon that had once shone over their bond, Lyra stood on the balcony overlooking the burning horizon. Her reflection shimmered in the silver glass of the moonlight. She wore Kael's crown, not because she wanted it, but because the kingdom needed it. In her hand, she held the pendant he had given her, its glow faint but alive. "You said I'd burn the sky for you, but it's you who became my fire." Her heart ached, but her tears no longer fell from despair. They fell from love, fierce and endless. The night answered her with a soft rustle of leaves and a faint howl in the distance. For a heartbeat, she could almost hear his voice, deep and tender. "I'm still here. little wolf?" She smiled through the ache, whispering, "Then stay with me until I can join you." The wind swirled around her, warm, carrying the scent of pine and smoke, the scent of him. In the days that followed, Lyra rebuilt what had been destroyed. She restored peace with the other clans, ended the cruel traditions that divided ranks, and opened the kingdom to all wolves, Alpha or Omega. The people called her the Queen of Ash and Light, for she rose from ruin and carried the memory of her king like a flame that refused to die. Every night, she visited his resting place, a silver-marked tomb beneath the oldest oak tree in the kingdom. She would kneel there, her hand pressed to the stone, and whisper stories of the day, like a promise that time could not steal him completely. The bond they shared had changed the world, reshaped destinies, and rewritten what it meant to love beyond fear. But Lyra knew one truth deeper than all others. Love wasn't about possession, it was about remembrance. And though the king was gone, his every inch lived within her, not as pain, but as power.
The night of the final moon came soft and silver. The forest breathed as if alive, and the stars glimmered like scattered tears across the sky. It had been 1 year since the Battle of Blood Peak, 1 year since Kael's last breath. The kingdom had healed beneath Lyra's reign. The walls, once cracked by war, now shimmered with ivy and moonlight. The air was peaceful, but her heart still carried the quiet ache of something unfinished. She stood by the window of the grand hall, wearing a flowing gown of white silk and silver threads, the mark of a queen and a widow both. The people celebrated below her, raising torches to honor their fallen king. The moon remembrance, they called it. Yet, even amidst the light and song, she felt the emptiness beside her, the place he should have been. Her hand touched the pendant on her chest. "You told me to live," she whispered into the quiet, "but you never said how to live without you." The wind answered in a hush, rustling through the banners like breath. Somewhere in the night, a lone wolf howled, and the sound sent a tremor through her soul. She followed the sound into the forest, barefoot, her white gown brushing against the silver grass. The moonlight led her path like a memory reborn. Every tree she passed carried echoes of their bond, every shadow, every whisper of wind. When she reached the ancient oak where Kael rested, the world around her seemed to still. His tomb glowed faintly beneath the moonlight, and the air shimmered with warmth. She knelt before it, her tears falling onto the carved name. Kael Dravyn, King of Wolves. "I kept my promise," she said softly. "I lived. I built what you dreamed of, but my heart," she heard her voice break, "my heart still calls your name." The pendant against her chest pulsed faintly, its light flickering. "I miss you," she whispered. "Every breath, every dawn." The wind rose again, swirling around her, and for a fleeting moment, she felt warmth, real and alive, press against her back like the ghost of an embrace. The glow around the tomb grew brighter. The ground trembled softly, not in violence, but in power, gentle, ancient, sacred. Lyra froze, her heart pounding. The moon above seemed to shift, its light focusing into a single beam that fell upon Kael's name. "No," she breathed. "It can't be." The pendant around her neck burst into brilliant light, the same golden hue as his eyes. "Lyra," a voice whispered, a voice she'd heard 1,000 times in dreams. She gasped, covering her mouth as tears welled up again. "Kael?" The light formed into a faint outline, a figure, tall and strong, made of gold and smoke. His eyes, fierce and kind, gazed at her with that same impossible warmth. "You kept your word. You lived. You saved them all."
Lyra reached out, trembling. "I trade it all to have you back." He shook his head softly. "You already have me." Her breath caught. "How?" He said, his voice low and steady. "The bond. It was never broken. I'm with you. In every breath, every heartbeat. You are my light, Lyra. You always were." The forest wept around them, the leaves trembling as if listening. Lyra stepped closer, her fingers brushing through the light that was him. "I thought you lost me," she whispered. "You did not lose me," he said. "You found me in every life you touched, in every wolf that kneels without fear, in every heart that believes in mercy." His form flickered, the light dimming slightly. "But it's time," he said softly. "Time to let me go so you can live fully." She shook her head, sobbing. "I don't want to forget you." Kael smiled, the kind of smile that could quiet a storm. "You won't," he said, "because the moon remembers, and so will you." His hand brushed her cheek, warmth fading as his body dissolved into gold dust. The light rose into the sky, spiraling toward the moon until it vanished completely. Lyra stood there beneath the ancient oak, bathed in silver light, her heart breaking and healing all at once. She looked up at the moon and whispered, "Then remember his name." Years later, the kingdom flourished under her reign. Songs of the Lycan King and his Omega Queen became legend. Tales sung beside hearth fires and whispered beneath full moons. Children played beneath murals of wolves crowned in light, and no one spoke of fear anymore. On the night of every full moon, Lyra would climb the hill alone, stand beneath the ancient oak and look toward the sky. "I see you," she'd whisper. And when the wind blew through the trees, warm and soft, she would smile, knowing it was him. Love had not died. It had simply changed form, eternal and untamed. As the years passed, her people said the moon grew brighter, as if it watched over her and the land she rebuilt from ashes. And when her time finally came, when her last breath joined the wind, the night itself shimmered gold. Some said they saw two wolves, one of fire, one of light, running side by side beneath the endless stars. The legend whispered through time, a promise carved into eternity.
Thank you for staying till the end. Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.